Hey there, this is Samantha Creager on the campus of Huntington University. You are listening to Rooted, an in-depth conversation with interesting people on topics that matter to the Forrester family. Make sure you subscribe to Rooted on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play, or anywhere that has podcasts. Also make sure to listen to Forrester Radio over on 105.5 WQHU, Radio with Roots. Today I am joined by Matt Webb, a film production professor here on Huntington University's campus. We are going to be discussing life after graduation.
Hello, Webb, and thank you for coming today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Ms. Creager.
Yeah. Well, today is we're talking about, postgraduate life.
Mm-hmm.
I know as me and my, thought process is kind of grinding, trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life after? Am I going to just continue to go to school? Am I going to get a job and not go to school?
Sure.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
So, today, on Rooted, we're going to talk about just tips and tricks that you may have your life leading up from college up until now and, your just general thoughts about this topic.
Yeah. Happy to share.
Awesome. So could you just tell us about your college years in general? What was your feelings about college?
I love school. I didn't originally want to come to Huntington for undergrad. I grew up in the area, so I was trying to find a place that was maybe a little bit further away. But I got pretty much a full ride in scholarships, which was super encouraging. And then I wanted to study theater at a Christian school, and when I looked around at other Christian schools, there just wasn't anything better. And I don't mean to say that there wasn't anything good. There was lots of good. But Huntington was just the best and offered so many different opportunities. And so I thought this would be great. And then when I got here, I loved it. My parents and I worked hard to make sure that I went away to college. So they wouldn't just call me or randomly show up on campus or anything like that. And I would try to avoid sneaking home to do laundry more than necessary. And it was a really good balance. I felt like I was going away to school, and I had a really great experience, made a ton of really good friends, lifelong friends. And I had an amazing academic experience, too. I loved the theater program. It was a space where I really grew and matured as a person, as a Christian. And even my other classes that were outside of my major, I really felt like I connected with professors that cared. And so that was a big inspiration for me to come back and teach 20-odd years later. So. Oh, yeah.
I also agree this university has, you and me have, a really good relationship. And I talked to my sister who went to, a community sort of liberal arts college. And she's she just can't fathom, the relationship students and teachers have here. She's my professors didn't give a crap whether if I was at class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of it is that it's small, and so we really get to know each other, which is good. But I also think that there's an sort of an ethos on campus where the professors who are hired have a heart to actually engage the students on a level that's more than just academic, but it is personal, it's relational, it's theological, it's spiritual. We want you to know that we are not just professors, but we can be mentors. And what I found in my experience is that I made some lifelong friends even of my professors while I was here. They still serve as mentors in lots of ways. So.
You were talking about how you wanted to find a university that was farther away, but you still chose Huntington. So was it the full ride that made you choose Huntington?
Well, the scholarship was a big deal. That certainly helped a lot. I knew that I could probably graduate debt-free if I came here. If I had some on-campus work and if I worked during the summers, I could probably pull it off.
That's a big draw.
Yeah, it was a huge draw. But ultimately, my folks were willing to help out if I wanted to go to a different school, and I really felt like God was calling me there. But I wanted to study theater, and I started looking around at other places, and Huntington just had so many opportunities. They had a summer touring program where we got to do 50 shows in 60 days across the Midwest and be on stage all the time. It was intense and so much fun. We did tons of great shows, and the shows that when I would go to schools and sort of see what they were doing, I didn't see other universities that were doing shows that were as thoughtful and shows that were as well presented. I was blown away by the performances, and I thought, man, I want to be a part of that. And I was really fortunate to become a part of that. I think probably I'd say the biggest single factor is connected to what we were just talking about. The head of the theater department called my school and asked if he could take me out to lunch. And wow. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to do that. But so I called my parents and I was like, is this okay? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. And so we went to Pizza Junction, which is right here in town.
Amazing.
And he just asked me about my life. He said that he had come to see me do a few shows and would love to have me come be a part of the program here. And it was that sort of personal one-on-one connection where I realized if I came to Huntington, I wouldn't just learn theater, but I would have mentors like Doc Rainbow.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted that. I wanted to have an opportunity to connect in that sort of a way. And I could see from the get-go that it wasn't going to just be 4 years at college. It was going to be 4 years of mentoring in college that would turn into a lifetime of support and encouragement and care. And it has. It's been that way. He's still a part of my life.
I love that. Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna get mushy.
Yeah. No, you're good. Well, it's been 30 years. It's been almost 30 years since he called the high school and invited me to lunch.
Oh my gosh.
So, and just a few months ago, he sent me a bunch of pictures that he found in a folder somewhere, and it was, I don't know, 20 or 30 photos, printed photos of me and my friends on stage. So
I love that.
Yeah, it was
That's
neat.
so good.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So as we know right now, you're a film professor.
Sure.
So what made you choose a theater degree?
Yeah, that's a good question. Originally, I didn't realize that film was an option. Film was not an option at Huntington. And I'd never really done anything with film. I'd always chosen to do video projects when there was an option not to write a paper when I was in high school. And so I knew that I enjoyed that piece of it, but I'd only ever been trained for theater. Mm-hmm. So when I started looking at places, I thought, theater is the thing. I want to be a storyteller. I knew that was sort of at the core of it. I wanted to be a storyteller. And film didn't seem like a thing yet. There were few theater programs that were really robust at Christian colleges and zero film programs.
Oh.
So there wasn't really very many options. This is back in the early 90s.
Gotcha.
It just wasn't a thing. They were really expensive. It was pre-digital. So in order to have a film program, not even tape. I mean, you could do tape, but that wouldn't really be so much a film program. It was film.
Oh, literal film.
Gotcha. Like 8 millimeter, 16 millimeter, 35. So it really it limited a lot of schools' ability to have those kinds of programs because it's just so expensive.
Right.
But when digital came around, that really opened the doors. It democratized the whole industry, and that included small universities like Huntington. So I studied theater because I wanted to be a storyteller, and it felt like that was what God was asking me to do. That God wanted to use my abilities as a storyteller, at that time an actor. I realized as much as I enjoyed acting, I was probably a better director. But my acting informed my directing so much because I had empathy for what it was like to be on stage. I understood the mechanics. I understood the language. So I was an okay actor, but I wasn't amazing. And I realized that directing was probably a direction that might be a better fit. Ultimately, I ended up getting an opportunity to do some teaching of theater in the classroom while I was in college through a class called Creative Dramatics, where we take children's literature and have elementary age kids, middle school students improvisationally act out the stories in class. And then we unpack more about the characters and the stories because the students actually get into the skin of the characters. And so that was an awesome experience, and I found out that I really like teaching. And again, Doc Rainbow said, this seems like a gift that you might have. You might want to lean into this a little bit. So I saw that there was a children's literature class coming up in the education department, and I asked if I could take the class. And the professor said, that's fine, but part of the class is that you have to be in the classroom. And I said, okay, well, I've already done creative dramatics because could I take that to the classroom because it's children's literature and it fits my theater world a little bit better. And she said, yeah, that'll work fine. So I did that, and it was, again, a really great experience. And so then I was able to set up a directed study where I worked with special populations. And I found out that I really loved teaching. And just like I thought I was going to be an actor, but I was more inclined to directing. Teaching and directing have a lot of similarities. Yeah. Guiding, especially kind of the way I teach, I try to guide and ask a lot of questions and
engage.
Yeah, try to be a little bit more of like a tour guide than like just a deliverer of information.
Instead of just reading off the PowerPoint, you're actually like giving the information over in a way that can translate to multiple teaching style or learning styles and things like that.
Yeah, I try to, and I think my directing experience has really informed that a lot.
Oh yeah.
So I found I really loved being in the classroom, and I worked with all kinds of different kids from across the county, and that to me was just this amazing experience. So I ended up after college I wrote a musical comedy show because I had done these summer performances and tours, and I thought, man, how great would it be to continue to do that if I could. So a buddy of mine, Dave O'Rourke, and then my brother Mike and another friend of ours, Eli Sassarin, who had worked with Dave over the summer, we all four hit the road, and we did a 45-show tour of the U.S. with this original musical comedy show that I wrote. And it got me into writing, which I really enjoyed, and I hadn't done so much of that. I'd done a lot of improvisation, and so I'd been working a lot in writing sketch comedy, but I've been writing it improvisationally. Yeah. Not, writing it and solidifying a script necessarily. I'd done a little bit of screenwriting in college and creative writing, that sort of thing, but not too much. And that was just a blast. So we spent half a year traveling, and when we were finished, we raised a lot of money, and so we took that and we went to Haiti for 6 months, and we used the money to work at a variety of different places where we were learning the language. We were trying to do projects that would be of benefit and help to the folks that we were staying with and the community that we were a part of. And it was really a learning experience for us. We didn't go down with some sort of idea that we would change Haiti, but we hoped that Haiti would change us. Ooh. And it did profoundly. We learned the language, and we were able to be really engaged in a lot of local community activities and ministries. And then I ended up meeting a young woman named Eva down there at the end of my time. And she said, my roommate teaches theater here at an international school and she's leaving to go back to the States. And we need somebody to teach that program. So I applied for the program, and I got the job. Yeah. And then my first year of teaching, Eva and I started dating, and then the next summer we got married, and so we were there for. She taught for 3 years, I taught for 2 years, and we were both down there for about 3 years altogether.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, we ended up doing everything from being in the classroom and helping to really build and try to grow a theater program at Kiskea Christian School where we were teaching. But also, we did a lot of community development work out in the mountains and in the countryside. And because of my experience working out there before, I was able to take a lot of the students who were from the upper class parts of Haitian society and show them a different part of Haiti that many of them had never seen before.
Ooh, yeah.
And that was a great experience for all of us. I mean, I learned a ton from them. Yeah, it was great. So after Haiti, we moved back to the States because I really wanted to get back into theater, and I was starting, as much as I was teaching students how to enjoy and love and really learn and hone their craft in theater, I thought,
yeah,
I miss it. I want to go do it myself again. I missed being on stage. I loved the directing and teaching, but I really missed the performing.
Yeah.
So we came back and started looking at grad schools, and I auditioned for several grad schools, and I sort of made the deal that I didn't want to go to a grad school unless it was really going to push me. So I ended up I ended up applying at the top 5 grad schools for theater performance in the country.
Ooh.
These are places where
Wow.
they take like 10 men out of 1,500 of applicants, that kind of a thing.
Like the Harvard of
that kind of a
performance.
thing.
Sort
Yeah,
of like,
so I mean,
wow.
Yeah, and the chances of me getting in were slim to none, and it turned out none. And so, no, it was fine. It actually turned out really good. What it did was it opened the door for me to receive a phone call from a buddy of mine that I met in Haiti. Mm-hmm. And he said, I know that you really love theater, but film has also been a huge part of your life. And it has since I was a little kid. My parents sort of taught me to love movies. My dad we started with a collection of beta movies, on Betamax. And now, I mean, my dad has hundreds and hundreds of DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff. And we love movies. We watched, I grew up in that kind of an environment and world. And he said, there's a seminary where I'm studying that has a new program in understanding how your faith and your art intersect through film. And you should take a look at it. I think it would be a good fit. So I never really wanted to work in specifically Christian art or art that was about Christianity or designed for Christians specifically. And that what I found was that was not the case at Fuller. It was about understanding art in general and how our faith intersects and interacts with art as creators, not just as consumers.
Nice.
And it was a perfect fit for me. And Eva loved it, and so we had a new baby, and so we packed up Jack and we moved out there in 2004, and he was 9 months old. And we spent the next 12 years out in Los Angeles, and I got my master's in theology and film at Fuller, and I worked all that time with other independent filmmakers on all kinds of stuff, music videos and short films and a couple of features.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was great. And at the end, I ended up, my family and I ended up developing an idea for a feature documentary and short film series about kids around the country who are trying to make the world better. Mm-hmm. So we spent 14 months on the road, and we went to all 50 states, and we interviewed 75 kids or groups of kids who were trying to change the world and make it better. And it was absolutely life-changing. My kids, when we hit the road, they were 6, 8, and 10, and they did all of the interviewing. They did a lot of the camera and sound work and lights. It was amazing.
They did a great job on that, by the way, too.
Thank you. It was so fun to see them grow and to see all of us grow as a family. Mm-hmm. We really became a team. But when we were on the road, we came to Huntington a few times because I have family in the area. And on one of those occasions, I spent an hour or so in the morning hanging out on Dr. Lance Clark's porch. And he said, so what would it take for you to come back and teach at Huntington? And I was like, oh, man, I'm a filmmaker. I'm not interested in that. I want to stay in L.A. My kids, that's their home. We'll go back when we get off the road. And he said, no, I get it. But I said, when I was in college, Doc Rainbow asked me, what do I want to do when I grow up? And I said, I want to be like you. I wanted to do the things that he does. My plan was that I would get 10, 15, 20 years of experience. And then when I felt like I really had something to bring to a classroom, then I would maybe look into teaching again.
Yeah.
And that just made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to the end of the road trip about a year later, and Lance gave me a call and said, hey, there's a position that's open. You've graduated almost 20 years ago now. Are you ready to come back and teach? And I thought, I don't know.
It's a big step.
It was a big step. But we came back and took a look and really felt like God was calling us here. So we took the plunge, and our kids were grateful to have grandparents and cousins much closer than ever before, and as were we. And it's turned out to be a really good fit for me here, better than I thought it would be. My wife found an amazing job working in nature, teaching kids to fall in love with and take care of our world. And it's just been really rich.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, your life has been a wild ride, and every time you tell your story, I just really like your story, honestly. But how did your expectations of how life is going to go match up with how it went?
Yeah. Well, what I realized early on was God was going to keep surprising me. I think I had some ideas and some plans of what might happen, and so I wrote that show, and we toured with it, and that seemed like maybe that would be a direction we would go. We even talked about doing a couple of other tours, including with my family. All my family are musical, and I've got four brothers who at different times of life have been worship pastors.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So we thought about maybe doing our own kind of a tour as a family. But when I was in Haiti, I had sort of an epiphanal experience where I felt like God was really asking me to trust and give myself over as a storyteller in a way that maybe I hadn't thought of yet. And I felt very compelled that God was asking me to just trust and follow wherever that might be, wherever it would lead. I think it was important that it happened before I started teaching, because it meant that when the opportunity came up to stay in Haiti and teach, I didn't run from it. I was ready to embrace it. Mm-hmm. And when the opportunity came for me to move to Los Angeles, I had been to LA on a J term in college and hated it. And I swore, man, I would never go back there. And then when 10 years later the opportunity arose again, and I went with Eva and Jack to check it out, and we all fell in love with it, I just thought, this is, again, God's invitation to trust and know that I'm not always going to know how things are going to play out. Yeah. So I guess what I've learned is to work hard and try lots of things and explore, experiment, and be bold in a lot of my choices. I mean, taking my kids and my wife on a 14-month road trip was a little nutty to some people. But we really felt like God was calling us to do that sort of a thing. We never planned on anything like that in our lives. And all of a sudden, the touring and traveling that I'd done in college lined up with the filmmaking that I was learning in Los Angeles. And it lined up with some challenges that my wife and I were facing and our family was facing with trying to find a way to marry my passions and my family. And not just my passions, but the interest of all of us. And the road trip was this amazing and crazy way for all of us to come together and to kind of to see how it could coalesce. So expectations, I guess I've learned to hope and plan and move forward, but also do it with open hands. I think that's a calling that God has for all of us that's in Scripture. He asked Abraham to leave everything he knew and head out on an adventure with the promise that he would inherit a large land and that even in his old age he would have a family that it seemed impossible to ever have.
Oh, yeah.
He and Sarah were old and had never had kids and didn't think that they could, and God surprised them and fulfilled a lot of their wishes and dreams that they just thought were impossible. So I guess for me, I go into it thinking I have ideas, I have wishes and dreams and plans. Well, what I found is that God's wishes and dreams and plans are a lot more interesting than mine, and a lot more fulfilling than mine. And
it's hard to accept sometimes.
Yeah, it's really hard to accept. But I guess I've learned to try to approach life in that way with open hands. So sometimes opportunities come up, and maybe they come to fruition, and maybe they don't.
Oh yeah.
But I lean into them as much as I can, and if the door closes, the door closes, and I just try to keep my eyes open to other things that might come about. It helps me then to not get too wrapped up in my control or my perception of control of my life, which is not real.
Yeah.
And also to sort of hope and trust, like I said, that God's plans are not our plans. God's ways, it says, are not our ways. But God's ways are better. And so when I look at the Psalms and think about what it means for for me to follow God and for God to answer my prayers and to give me the desires of my heart. Instead, I don't look at it as God give me what I want. I look at it as God giving me my wants, so that my wants become God's wants, and I don't have to have great expectations that are built on my own human desires. I can start to have expectations that God has things that are way beyond my imagination.
Yeah.
And that's far better than anything I could ever dream up.
Oh yeah, faith in moving closer to Him.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So along with that, so like you kind of said like let go and like trust in God. So when like listeners, could you give our listeners tips about how to get into like jobs?
Yeah, because there is the reality of you need to make money and
like
put food on the table and pay your loans and all that stuff. Yeah, I know. So I suppose there's sort of a trite way of saying just trust that God's going to take care of everything and don't worry. And it's true. However, I believe that God also invites and expects us to do stuff.
Yeah.
So we can't just sit around waiting for things to happen, but we need to take action and be responsible for ourselves. Jesus was trained as a carpenter, right? Which means that he had a craft that he learned to make a living.
Yep.
And it turns out that he went on a ministry where he may or may not have really done that all that much. But Paul was the same. He was trained as a tent maker, though even that word might mean stage builder for theater.
That's amazing.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the Bible shows that God's people have professions. They have jobs that they do, but God can use them in their work to make an impact in the world. Yeah. There's a celebration when they're building the wall around Jerusalem in the Old Testament. There's a celebration of all the artisans who make it, who decorate and build it and do all these amazing things at the temple. As you know, they're building the temple and the walls going up and all this stuff's happening, and it's a rebuilding of the dream. And it's beautiful to hear the individual names of people being called out for their handiwork, their craft. And to me, that's an invitation to say that God can use our craft for kingdom work.
Oh, yeah.
But also it means that we have to have a craft.
Yep.
So we have to work hard. We have to hone our skills. We have to do something. So after college, I would say the biggest thing is to be relentless in your pursuit of finding something to do. Mm-hmm. And you also have to be realistic. Most people aren't going to leave college and immediately get an amazing job that's going to fulfill all of their dreams, and it'll be the job they do for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. Many of us leave school and hop around from job to job. But I think that's part of living with an open-handed life, approach to life. So I would say find ways that you can grow as a person, but also find ways that you can take care of your responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I wanted to stay in theater, so I worked hard to marry theater and ministry by writing that show and then raising money to move to Haiti.
Yeah.
It was hard work. I spent 6 months writing the show, practicing the show, booking the show, and then another 4 months traveling. So it was not easy. It was a ton of work, but I got to do it. I learned the language in Haiti, and I learned how to do all kinds of things because I worked in the summer for a construction company, and I learned skills about how to build stuff, and that came in handy when I was in Haiti. And I put myself in the classroom when I was in college, and I took opportunities of that, and it opened up doors for me to be able to teach later, and actually taught me how to be a teacher even while I was still a student. So I guess my encouragement is to think of all the things that you already have done, think of all the things that you already have gifts in, and try to figure out how to lean into those things and express those things in ways that can help to pay the bills. And there's lots of jobs out there, but it takes a lot of work, and community and networking is a big piece of that. In the industry, the catchphrase, it's all about who you know, really means something in the film industry, and not just the film industry, but all kinds of industries.
Oh, yeah.
But it really is about who you know.
That could get your foot in the door. That could get you a job.
Oh, of course. It's the mentors that, like I talked about, Doc Rainbow and others. They're the ones who write the resume or the recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
Right, for trying to get work. So work hard and prove to people that you're dependable.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that can help you get work, but a big piece of it is just also accepting work that may not be the thing that you love. One of the things that I learned along the way is that sometimes I need to do manual labor and jobs like that because it gives me space to be creative while I'm not working. Sometimes I just need my body to be moving and to do something that's not particularly creative, maybe even redundant or repetitive. But then in my downtime, I have space to really grow as an artist and be creative. I'm not exhausted in my mind. When I was in Los Angeles, I worked for Fuller Seminary full time, and I made movies on the side. And that actually worked out great for me. It meant that I was able to pay the bills and have insurance for my family and do all those things, but be able to practice my craft as a real amateur, not professional. And I love that word amateur. One of the directors I worked with, Laura Lee Ferrer, she's amazing, but she taught me that the word amateur means one who loves. Professionals do it for the money, but amateurs do it for their love of the craft.
Yeah.
And because I was working full time, it took extra effort to make movies.
Oh, yeah.
Which meant that I had to really love it. And
it pushes you.
Yeah. And I had to learn how to balance my life. And I wasn't doing a great job of balancing my life. But
it's hard.
It's very hard. And counseling was super helpful for me and my wife as we tried to figure out how to do that balance. It continues to be that way. Balance is hard. But I would say if you're trying to figure out how to get a job after college, the big thing is be willing to work your butt off. Put yourself out there and work really hard and do your best. If you can do your best in your work, you can show the people that you're working with that no matter what the job is, you care about the craft of that particular job.
Yeah.
So I was a janitor at a church for a while, And I did my very best to show that I cared about that work. And I was a page at the library shelving books, and I did my best to show that I was going to do it with excellence. And all of those things opened up opportunities for me to do more film, strangely enough. All of the jobs I've ever had where I worked really hard, and all of them opened up doors for me to be creative and follow my call that I feel to be a storyteller.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, I want to get you out of here on time because I know you have a busy schedule.
I do. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're okay. But these are all very good tips and advice and guidance for people who are thinking about what they need to do to graduate. Is there any other pieces of wisdom or tips or ways to find calling that you would want to drop right before you leave?
Well, calling is one of those words that has a lot of weight to it. I think that God calls us to different things at different times. Sometimes God calls us to serve our families. Sometimes God calls us to serve our enemies. Sometimes God calls us to great adventure, and sometimes God calls us to very mundane sorts of things. I do think that for me, God has placed on my life a bigger call, which is to tell stories. But I need to understand that while that might be sort of the larger picture of my life, on a daily basis and on a more seasonal basis, God might be calling me to do different kinds of things, and just to do everything that I do with excellence and care and for the glory of God. So I would say, as an encouragement to students who are trying to figure out where God's directing them in life, don't worry so much about the big picture. That can come clearer over time. Maybe many people, I think, go through their whole lives and never really get a sense of the big picture, but have an acute understanding of what God's calling them to day. And so I would just encourage students like yourself and others to be listening and attentive to where God might be using you now. Because now is the most important thing. We often get, well, maybe not the most important thing, but we often get sucked into this idea that it's all going to be great one day, you know, and we're future-oriented and we're moving in that direction. I get
moving
that.
Towards one goal.
Yeah, but, you know, none of us are promised tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's the best thing is to live the best we can today. Ecclesiastes talks a lot about life not being fair, but the conclusion is, even though life's not always fair, live today well. Celebrate the joys of today. Work hard in the things that you do, and worship God throughout it. And I think that, to me, that's a really great lesson to as we look at the idea of call. Is to be present now and try to be attentive to what God's asking us to do now. You've been here for the last 3.5 years, excited about sound, but what I've really noticed in the last year for you is that you have become a mentor and a confidant for younger students who are also interested in sound to come to and feel like they've got someone who will invest in them. To me, that's a beautiful living into your call now. And who knows if that will turn into teaching other people or mentoring other people down the road or being a professional sound recordist or artist in some way. But I do think it's shaping you for other things that God has in mind down the road. So will you be a professional in the sound industry of film or radio or television? Who knows? Yeah. Will you be a mentor or a teacher for the rest of your life? Who knows? Yeah. But God's using today to shape you and to shape those around you. And to me, it's just beautiful to see that. So I just want to encourage you in that I love what you're doing. And I think that you're helping to shape and grow others for the kingdom because of it. So thank you. Thank you for living into your call today.
Oh, thank you for also being my mentor.
It's my pleasure.
All right. just thank you guys for listening to this episode of Rooted. This is a really good one, I think. Not gonna pat our own backs, but It
was fun to be here. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Thanks.
And that was today's episode of Rooted. Thank you so much to Professor Matt Webb for joining me here today to talk about topics that matter to Huntington University students. Please remember to subscribe to Rooted and listen to Forster Radio over on 105.5 WQHU. Stay rooted, HU.